Hello and welcome back to the finals of the World Championship in Through the Ages. Today, this year's World Championship will come to a conclusion because we have the last game ahead of us. It will be a two-player game against E5, and thanks to my win against PV4 from the video before, I still have some chances to at least finish at the third position, which I would be very happy about because then I would be part of the prize pool. But in order to achieve that, I have to win this last two-player game against E5, so that will be very exciting now. And without further ado, we will take a look at the game. I am playing in the second position in this game, and first of all we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that we have a Hollywood in H3, there's Fleming, there's Marlene Dietrich, and in H2 we have Shakespeare. However, there's no Bach, no Gaudi, no Darwin, so Shakespeare, if one of the players could manage to pull him off, could potentially be very strong, but we also have some other strong combinations like Maria Theresa in the Ocean Liner service. Napoleon could be a good military counter, Newton and Nobel could maybe lead to strong economical civilizations. In H3 we also have the Red Cross, we have Mandela and Churchill, and also Steve Jobs for a little bit of lab synergy together with Marie Curie. Then we have also the Railroad in H2 together with James Watt. In H1 we have St. Peter's Basilica but no Forbidden City, Silk Road but no Universitas, Great Wall but no Himeji Castle. We have the two military action leaders in H1 with Joan of Arc and Jan Žižka, also Genghis Khan to maybe go for a bit of a strength push. We have Gutenberg to maybe set up potentially some printing presses for Shakespeare, which could be interesting. We have Michelangelo together with Machu Picchu and St. Peter's Basilica, which also can be very interesting. And then also Eleanor as maybe a strong transitional leader. We have no Acropolis in this game. E5 is in the first position and he starts with taking Hammurabi. And I think for me it's a relatively clear pick. I will go for Pyramids in Ridgeland. That of course means that the Engineering Genius will be available only for one civil action for E5, which he can easily grab thanks to having Hammurabi. But yeah, I don't think it's worth it to take it away. It's only one more resource for me and I would miss out on the Pyramids. And there's no Acropolis that I can wait for. The wonder that could be revealed could be the library. That could maybe be fine, but I think now taking Ridgeland and Pyramids is a strong start for myself, and I was willing to give E5 the Engineering Genius for only one civil action, and then the next turn I will be able to go for Boudica. I could have taken a stockpile instead of the Ridgeland, and I would also be able to go for Aristotle, but I think Boudica is just generally quite strong, and even though Aristotle and Pyramids is a strong combination, I don't necessarily prefer him that much over Boudica that I would be willing to go for maybe a weaker yellow card here. Then it's E5's turn, and his turn is basically relatively clear, I would say. He will just elect Hammurabi, build a mine, and then take those two yellow cards, and at the next turn he has to make a decision whether he wants to go for the Stonehenge or maybe the library. Now it's my turn, I will go for Boudica, so this turn is also relatively clear for me, just doing normal stuff, going for Boudica, building my mine, increasing my population. I will draw the medieval army tactic, which is interesting, because Jan Žižka is coming down the road, and if E5 doesn't go for him, maybe I could just take him with knowing that there are two copies of knights. And E5, interestingly, is going for the Stonehenge, which is available for one civil action cheaper than the library. And I mean, it's a strong wonder. The early science can give you a very nice boost, and thanks to the additional civil action from Hammurabi, it is also likely that he will have enough civil actions to make use out of the additional science. And then with the urban growth, he can actually build a second lab, still build a first step for one resource, and then with the Engineering Genius, the second step for free. And he will also already increase his population, so spending his civil actions very efficiently here. Now it is my turn and I will start seeding. I will have knowledge about the reds, so hopefully I will be able to prepare for them. And also I want the event deck to flip relatively quickly, because I will actually go for Jan Žižka this turn with having the medieval army tactic in hand. And then it could be nice, because I'm hopefully will be better prepared for strength events to maybe just seed a lot, and maybe I will draw some strength events and then can maybe get a little bit of an advantage of Jan Žižka's strength. The event revealed is the development of crafts. That could allow me to just finish the pyramids now, which would be very nice. I even can take the additional science from Boudica. However, I made the decision that I want to take this early copy of iron. I could have potentially just finished the pyramids and taken the copy of iron, but as I said, I also want to go for Jan Žižka. This turn is available for one civil action. I for now can just take him in hand, still get the economical benefits from Boudica, and as soon as the event deck will flip, or as soon as I maybe need his strength, I can then go for him and maybe hopefully with a copy of knights actually go for a bit of a threatening amount of strength. So I didn't want to give this early copy of Iron to e5, who can easily go for it with having the additional science from Stonehenge. Now a copy of Alchemy will be available for him, but I think with the Stonehenge, the Iron would definitely be the thing that he would prefer to upgrade to. And while I don't finish the pyramids this turn, now with building a lab, I get my science production going, and also I can at the next turn, instead of finishing the pyramids, then maybe just already go for 2 iron upgrades, setting up some very early strong iron production, and then in 2 turns maybe finish the pyramids, and then I have 5 civil actions. I already have 2 upgrades, 5 resource production going, the economical benefits from Boudica, and then hopefully with having Yanchishka also a nice way to go for some military. So I thought that would generally be a strong position that I maneuver myself into. My next draw I will actually get 2 more tactics, which is maybe not ideal. The phalanx maybe offers me a little bit of flexibility. If I get a free warrior, maybe the phalanx tactic could be the stronger one than the medieval army tactic. e5 sadly gets in code of laws for 2 civil actions. That is of course a nice thing to get for him, with having the Stonehenge allows him to invest 6 science very nicely, and after developing the code of laws, finishing the Stonehenge, he will now go for the alchemy to maybe have the option to set up some science production. Then this turn I could have again finished the pyramids, but I think now it's stronger to get the iron production going. If I don't go for it now, then it will get delayed. I can maybe go only for 1 at the next turn, so it will be a lot of resources that I'm missing out on. So I think it's best to just start the iron production now. I can go for 2 upgrades, and then I have 1 civil action left. I could potentially take one of those cards that are available for 1 civil action, but I don't think I need any of those. The reserves and the patriotisms, I don't think I really need the warfare as well. So I will just increase my population, making sure that I have a free population. Now going into consumption, but at least I was able to accumulate a bit more food for 1 turn. And also interestingly, I will not draw the foray and the border conflict, which I was very happy about, because this could actually mean that I get maybe some nice value out of Yanchishka later on. Now it's e5's turn. He will go for the alchemy, goes for 1 upgrade, takes the engineering genius, the breakthrough, and also Eleanor, so he can go for some strong yellow cards, and then he goes for Eleanor as a nice transitional leader. However, I was not too unhappy to see him going for Eleanor, because that means that he maybe also wants to push a lot, meaning a lot of events will be revealed, so hopefully I will actually be able to get some value out of those strength events, with hopefully being able to go for more strength in e5. I think Michelangelo maybe also could have been an interesting choice here for him, with having the engineering genius, with there being St. Peter's Basilica, and maybe the Machu Picchu, also the ocean liner service in H2. We saw Marta Pecheur pulling off a very nice Michelangelo game in the World Championship Finals, in the second last game that you saw in this channel, so I think maybe that could have also worked nicely here, but of course e5 doesn't have iron production yet, and that maybe makes it a bit more difficult to go for some wonders, and Eleanor is also quite a nice leader to get at the end of H1 after having a strong HA leader. Then this turn I will start seeding those strength events. I will start with the border conflict, which is probably the stronger one. The development of warfare is revealed, which I was not too happy about, because ideally I would like to just go for the medieval army tactic, but now that I have the free warrior I will just take it, because thanks to having the phalanx tactic I can now still maybe just go for 2 knights at some point and then get quite a bit of strength going. Also, as you can see, this turn I took a science from Boudica, which is interesting, because if I would have taken a resource I could have actually finished the pyramids this turn. However, this turn when I finish the pyramids, I have, after the 2 civil actions left, I definitely need to increase my population when I take the free warrior. And there are actually a bunch of cards that I kind of would like to take. And because of that, I will delay the pyramids for 1 turn, instead take 1 additional science, which might also be very valuable, because I have a lot of resources anyway, so taking the resource from Boudica would be nice to finish the pyramids, but generally the science might be more needed anyway. And now, what cards am I eyeing here? First of all, there's of course a copy of Knights in the row, but I won't make it that it will fall in the discard spot, and with this I don't think it's necessary to take it for 2 civil actions here. But there are some cards on the 1 civil action area that could be interesting, and I think one of them is actually the Theocracy here. I have the Pyramid, so I have already a 5th additional civil action from there, and the Theocracy can in 2-player games be nice for some maybe peaceful games. The additional happy phase, strength, and culture reduction can just be a very nice package for that, but the Theocracy also gives one quite a bit of military potential with the happy phase, the strength, and the additional military action. And at the moment there weren't a lot of additional events revealed that give additional food or population, meaning that without the happy phase from the Theocracy, maybe it won't be that easy for me to put two or maybe even one unit into the knights, depending on what developments will be revealed. So the happy face from the Theocracy could make me a lot more threatening together with the strength in the military actions. Maybe I can actually go for quite a threatening strength push against e5, or if it is not possible, it could still be nice to have it and maybe also use it in a peaceful way. Just having a government form available could be nice. So I thought that having the Theocracy here could be quite nice. However, if I go for the Theocracy, then I think it could also be quite important to take the cultural heritage, because investing into Theocracy and then also wanting to go for knights is quite a bit of an investment, and the cultural heritage will maybe help me to do this and still have a bit of science left, or maybe just have the science in order to go for that. And with that, I made a decision to delay the pyramids, just take the science from Boudica, take the cultural heritage, take the Theocracy. Now with my last civil action, I could just go for an iron upgrade. I think that would be very fine. However, I made the decision here to maybe go for a bit of a safe pick and also grab the irrigation. If I don't take it now, the other copy might be taken by e5. There is an ocean liner service, but if I should get the ocean liner service, then having the irrigation is actually quite nice. But of course, it also means that maybe there are some ways to fix my food production. But we saw in the last game against PV4 that can always potentially backfire. And now I have the chance to pick it for one civil action. And this has a bit of a cost with delaying the iron upgrade, but I have very strong resource production anyway, so maybe missing out on this upgrade for now is not too bad. And at the next turn I still have enough resources to finish the pyramids and go for one iron upgrade. So I thought having the irrigation is not bad, because actually going for some early food production with having Jan Shushka and maybe going for some military pressure could be interesting, even though of course there are the rats coming, so probably I don't want to go for the irrigation too early. As you can see, I actually discarded the medieval army tactic because I definitely want to keep the foray. I don't want to reveal one of those tactics yet, because there is maybe a chance that e5 lets me get the first copy of knights now, not knowing if I will actually need those for tactic. So it's maybe quite likely that he will take them anyway. But I didn't want to reveal a tactic, and with that I committed to the phalanx tactic now that I've gotten the free warrior. I will draw another strength event, a call to arms, and also a colonization card. e5 also can take the free warrior, will increase his population, will also go for the irrigation, will go for the knights, develops the irrigation and starts going for some food production immediately, which might be nice for him, but there are the rats coming, so maybe there's the chance for me to actually make him lose some food soon. At my turn, I will continue seeding, pushing the foray into the deck. The event revealed is the development of science, giving some additional science for both of us. And then this turn, I will just finish the pyramids. I will go for my last iron upgrade, and then I have one civil action left. There are some cards that I could potentially take. The masonry can often be a very interesting card in two-player games. Would work very nicely with the Silk Road, or maybe the Great Wall, or the Ocean Liner service. And also having the drama in hand, of course, can be important. However, here we have not the most interesting theater leaders. There's, of course, Shakespeare, but for him, maybe the printing press or journalisms are more important to have, especially because there's only one copy of journalism, but there are two copies of opera. I have some iron production, so I don't think I necessarily need to grab the drama, especially because grabbing the drama would mean that the monarchy falls down to one civil action for e5, meaning that if he maybe wants to go for that anyway, especially with having Eliano and the additional military action being quite valuable, then maybe it would just give him one free civil action, which I don't want to give him. I could take the alchemy to go for some science production, so I think there are some things that I definitely could do, but I ideally want to go for the knights soon, putting some pressure on e5, being prepared for the strength events, and then maybe the alchemy would get delayed. And now if I want to invest my science into Theocracy and knights, I don't have that much science left, so the masonry is maybe also a little bit of a stretch, even though it can still be a very nice card. And so at the end I just went for the Theocracy, but taking the masonry in hand could definitely be interesting. However, at the next turn, if the knights are on the row, it definitely could be that I maybe just want to go for them. For example, if e5 seeds now and then gets stronger, I really maybe would like to take the knights even for expensive, and if I take the masonry I have a full hand. So at the end I just developed the Theocracy, getting one culture reduction more already this turn, putting me at 3 strength, and with that maybe also making it more likely in case e5 seeds that I am actually already the strongest and can maybe again seed at my turn, and so that was my decision for my last civil action. I will then draw 2 colonies, the wealthy territory and the inhabited territory. e5 will actually seed, the development of planning is revealed, and the options for that are the development of trade routes, markets and religion. and e5 will not take the development of religion, instead the development of trade routes. Wants to have the additional resource available. He will actually go for the monarchy, so it was good that I let it stay on 2 civil actions, meaning that he has to pay an additional civil action now. He will now go for Eleanor, goes for the monarchy, goes for the Machu Picchu. He doesn't have any iron yet, but he knows that he will get the last copy as an engineering genius in hand. He has already the irrigation, so the Machu Picchu could be a nice wonder for him, especially with having already a nice amount of civil actions and science production. And then with the last civil action, he will grab the drama, which definitely can be a nice card to have in 2-player games, especially with maybe expecting to have some additional population now that he goes for the Machu Picchu. At my turn, as you can see, I pushed the call to arms. However, it is the question if I actually do want to push, because I can do something relatively strong here, I would say, and that can potentially get ruined by the events. There are 2 events that would be very nice for me to see, the foray and the border conflict. There's one neutral event, or one event that I don't have knowledge about, and then there's the reds. And the reds, on one hand, would be fine, because e5 would actually lose more food than I would lose now, but it would take the possibility away from me to go for that relatively strong turn, and the turn would look like this. I would go for knights, take 1 science from Boudica, take knights, develop knights, increase population, also elect Jan Žižka, build 2 knights, reveal the tactic, and with that I would actually go up to 13 strength, which is quite threatening to e5. And he, even if he goes for knights and then maybe copies the phalanx tactic, or maybe has a tactic on his own, would only go up to 7 strength, meaning he would in such a scenario need 3 defense cards to defend, which is maybe not that likely to have. And if I put 2 workers into the knights, it might mean that I have an uprising issue at the next turn. However, I have this blunder in hand, and there is maybe a chance that I could then at the next turn play this aggression, take 3 food from e5, and with that again be able to increase my population and fix my uprising issues, staying on 13 strength and being quite threatening. So I kinda like this turn, and maybe it could be worth it to not see it just to make sure that I can do it, but there are just 2 events that are very strong anyway. It's also nice to just keep pushing, scoring some culture, getting even more knowledge about the event deck, and with that I made a decision to push, but I was hoping that maybe there are no reds revealed or no other annoying event that potentially was seeded by e5. Sadly, as you can see, there are actually the reds revealed, making that potentially the turn not longer possible. I could now take a food from Boudica and then take the development of markets. I could actually again increase my population, but then I'm missing a civil action to get into the knights, because I need to play the cultural heritage to get the additional science to go for the knights. And so I, this turn, have to change plans a little bit. At least maybe now that I don't necessarily need to go for the knights, I can maybe wait for them to be available at the next turn. I made the decision to take the development of religion, just for a bit of additional culture production, and I might relatively soon need a happy face, because I will now, after my turn, lose 2 yellow tokens, and with going for 2 upgrades to irrigation, I will be able to increase my population, and thanks to having the religion it will be happy, and then I can maybe put it into the knights at the next turn if it is needed to get stronger. Now I have 2 civil actions left, and I made a decision to actually take the printing press here, which is maybe an interesting pick at the first look. There are some interesting yellow cards that I could take. Instead I could take a rich land in the urban growth, even though the rich land is probably not that nice to have. However, it could still be nice to maybe build a 3rd farm at some point, so for that it could still be nice. So I could take the breakthrough, the additional science might actually be very valuable. Maybe it could even be an idea to go for the Silk Road at the next turn. However, probably I don't want to block myself from the ocean liner service. So why do I go for the printing press? And the answer is basically Shakespeare. Because the problem with Shakespeare is that in H2 there's only 1 copy of journalism. So if Bach is in the game, you don't necessarily need to prepare for him, you can just take him. Then if you at some point get one of the copies of opera, you're ready to go and can produce a lot of culture production. However, with Shakespeare there's only 1 copy of journalism, so if Shakespeare is early, I can't really grab him without there being the risk that I can't really do anything with him for a long time. And so just having this printing press in hand guarantees me that I can use Shakespeare. I have now some food production. He could be a very strong leader for me, especially with there being no other culture leaders. And if I don't take the printing press, maybe the breakthrough, then the printing press would be available for e5. He already has quite some strong food production soon with having the Machu Picchu. He has the drama in hand, and then he might just take the printing press, has all the things ready to go in order to take Shakespeare. and now he actually has the trouble. If Shakespeare is early, does he want to deny him from me, but with not knowing whether he can actually go for him? And maybe he will then leave him to me, but that would again be nice for me. So I think the printing press, even though it's a bit expensive to take it for 2 civil actions, is at the end more important than maybe just taking a bit of value of one of those yellow cards, even though of course it could be quite nice to maybe have a bit of additional science, because that is maybe my weak spot at the moment, especially if I go now into knights, I will be relatively low, but at the end I just rather wanted to have the printing press here. Now I will draw my last H1 cards. I get a good harvest and a rebellion, which both could potentially be interesting events. Now H2 will start. I was kinda hoping that E5 would seed with having Eleanor, and he does get a bit punished for it. A border conflict is revealed, giving me 3 additional resources. E5 will lose the farm, which he maybe doesn't need that much for in the near future anyway, because with finishing the Machu Picchu, he has now 3 food production again anyway. The iron was the last copy in the deck, which is maybe a bit unfortunate, but he can still go for 2 upgrades if he wants to at the next turn, and then he will have quite some strong resource production. Also, he develops the drama already to make space in his hand, and it is of course, with having a lot of population, a very cheap way to just start a bit of culture production. Now it is my turn, I'm again the strongest. I could see the good harvest, but if E5 at some point decides to rebuild the farm, he just gets a bit more out of that, so I made the decision to hold back on that for a little bit, also because I don't know which player maybe gets the ocean liner service. We both already have some food production, so maybe the ocean liner service will not be taken anyway, but I think having a lot of population, especially with potentially going for Shakespeare, might be quite strong. If I go for the ocean liner service, I don't want to help E5 out with the good harvest to also give him a lot of population, so I wanted to hold back with this event and instead went for the rebellion, because for this turn I actually thought about going for the St. Peter's Basilica, as I have a lot of resources that I can invest and not the most science to maybe invest those very nicely, and then I thought the St. Peter's Basilica might be quite nicely increasing my culture production, and then the rebellion is quite a nice event to seed, so I made the decision to put that one into the deck. However, the event revealed is actually the Pestilence, which is a bit of an annoying event, as I don't have a free population that I can lose, and the only thing that I really can very nicely use is actually the religion, because if I lose a warrior, I will be weaker on E5's turn. Maybe I could then increase my population again, go for knight, go for a phalanx tactic. Maybe that could be possible, but no, I was kind of hoping that E5 might again seed, then the fray is out, and then there's only the call to arms coming, and I thought maybe it is actually not really necessary to invest into the knights. It's a bit of an investment with me being on low science, and if I don't necessarily need to get stronger, then maybe, yeah, maybe I can instead invest my science into some other stuff, and my civil actions. Of course, not going for knights means that I don't really make that much use out of Jan Žižka, but it could still be nice to maybe go for something else. And yeah, with keeping the warrior, I will remain stronger for now. I will just go for the St. Peter's Basilica. With finishing that, I don't really miss the religion that much. I mean, it is a bit painful to miss out on the culture production, especially in a 2-player game, but it's maybe not too bad. And then I have the population maybe available for elsewhere to put it into printing presses, or maybe an additional farm, or maybe into military units. And so I will go for St. Peter's Basilica, and I will just finish it, getting me out of corruption. As you can see, that means that I will actually skip the knights, which is an interesting decision. If E5 decides now to get stronger, and then there's the fray on top, that would be quite annoying. So it could definitely backfire, but there are 2 copies of Cavalryman, and I just didn't like it that much to not finish it. It would mean that I don't have it easy to get out of corruption, and the Cavalryman might be my preferred way to go for some strength anyway. It is definitely a bit dangerous. I could maybe backfire, it could lead to me not winning the fray, but I was willing to take that risk, just having that finished, with that also meaning that I am again prepared to go for the ocean liner service. If I just take it and not finish it, then I am not prepared to take the ocean liner. If I don't take it at all, then it's actually not that easy to spend my civil actions very efficiently. I maybe would then have to take some cards that I don't really want to take, and at the end, even though it could backfire, I was willing to just skip the knights, knowing that there are 2 copies of Cavalryman in the deck. I keep the good harvest in hand, also 1 colony. I draw the autonomous territory and also a war over territory. I was happy to see that there is actually a copy of Cavalryman coming down the row, and I also was happy to see that E5 makes the decision to seed, meaning that I win the fray and get some additional food or resources. E5 this turn will go for the iron, can go for 1 upgrade, is now at 6 resource production, and interestingly he will go for Nobel, making it that Eleanor indeed served as a very nice transitional leader, with him getting a very early H2 leader. However, going for Nobel means, of course, that he is not doesn't contest over Shakespeare any longer, meaning I can just perfectly plan for Shakespeare from now on, maybe setting myself up to go for some very nice culture production with him. But of course, Nobel is quite strong to get early in H2, and he gets the civil action back now very early from Eleanor, so that is probably a fine choice. But of course, now I can just go for Shakespeare without any contention. But if he doesn't go for Nobel, then without having the journalism, it's maybe also not that great for him to fight over Shakespeare without knowing if he can actually use him. Would require a lot of civil actions maybe from him, and so he just goes for Nobel, and electing him also makes him stronger. But as you can see, I will this turn actually go for a war over territory. The cavalryman being in the row actually allows me to go for quite a bit of strength, enough that there isn't any big risk that I will actually lose the war, and so I will declare this war against e5, will go for the cavalryman, can go for 2 more population. What did I take from the Freud? 1 resource and 2 food, so that I just have enough food to again increase my population 1 more time at the next turn, and then I can just go for 2 cavalrymen, putting myself at 15 strength out of the sudden. So that was a very nice option for me, and I just think it's very strong to go for this, even though it means that I'm quite low in science. But thanks to the cultural heritage, I have still enough science to maybe go for 1 printing press at the next turn, for example. And losing those yellow tokens and me gaining them is definitely a bit painful for e5. If he only wants to lose 1, he already has to do quite some investments. He has not enough science to go for strategy plus a military unit, which is very nice for me. He could, maybe that might be his best option, he could already have a copy of mobile artillery, then he could go for knights and cannons, and it's just enough resources to go for 1 army. But even then I would win the war by 1 strength and would steal 1 yellow token, so there isn't really any big risk, unless there's some helpful events coming, which could happen. But normally this war should give me 1 or maybe even 2 yellow tokens if e5 doesn't want to do too big investments into the military. And with that, I think it's just a very strong option to go for that, and no, I don't think there's any alternative that is a lot stronger here. Also, it means that I increase my culture production by 2 thanks to Jan Žižka, now that I have 2 tactics fulfilled. e5 seeds, the call to arms is revealed, meaning he gets hit by another strength event, will at least draw 2 cards, but has only 4 civil actions to work with. He will go for the strategy, builds 1 drama, going up to a 3 culture production, takes the cannons, and then goes for his last upgrade to iron. So he mostly ignores the war, but at least makes sure that he doesn't lose 3 yellow tokens. But no, losing 2 yellow tokens to the war now is definitely quite a setback for him. But he has at least quite a strong economy going, has the strategy now, and no. So here also still some nice stuff going for him. At my turn I could potentially seed 1 of those events, but for the good harvest it is still true that I don't know how nicely it will be for me or for e5, because 1 of us might get the ocean liner service and then it might be stronger for the other one. The autonomous territory is also quite risky to seed, so instead of seeding the event I actually made a decision to play this blunder against e5, because it's maybe not that likely that it will be successful, as 1 H2 defense card is enough for him to defend, but he maybe still has to discard a lot of cards, maybe has to make some awkward decisions, maybe he seeded a colony and card could be missing then, and I don't miss out on any draw with going for this aggression, so I just went for it. First of all, I steal 2 yellow tokens, then I go for this aggression, and e5 actually uses 2 H2 defense cards, indicating that maybe he wants to keep some of the other cards, or maybe it's just that many defense cards that he doesn't have enough normal cards left to send away, or maybe it's 1 or 2 tactics that he wants to keep. So I was quite happy to see that. Of course it doesn't go through, but at least it costs him 2 colonization cards. Now it is my turn. With increasing my population, I already am out of corruption, and then I have potentially some options available, and I made a decision that I want to take this copy of Rifleman here. I have a bit of military pressure at the moment, and there's just 1 copy of them in the game. I could have some stuff to do. I could maybe play the cultural heritage, start going for some printing presses, but instead of putting my worker into the printing press, I have now the option to maybe just build a 3rd farm this turn. Also, maybe putting the worker somewhere where it will be very useful. And with that I have maybe the 3 civil actions to take the Rifleman without too much trouble, and if I draw a tactic now, maybe I can even be more threatening and put again some pressure on e5. So I made the decision to take the rifleman. The question is, of course, do I want to build this additional farm? Because if I still get the ocean liner service, then maybe I don't need it. But it's already quite late now. I don't have the most civil actions. I probably don't have enough science to go into justice system. So taking and finishing the ocean liner service will take a lot of civil actions. I also want to go for Shakespeare and opera, maybe some other stuff as well. And with that, I just think maybe it will take too many civil actions anyway to go for the ocean liner service, and with that I just made the decision to rather build one farm. Maybe it means that I leave the ocean liner service to e5, but he has some nice food production already anyway, and maybe I can now see the good harvest at the next turn. Could have maybe also already seeded at this turn, but I rather went for the aggression. And and then I also have a lot of population with the good harvest coming. For the last civil action, I could have taken one of those yellow cards. The urban growth could be very clean, 3 resources for 1 civil action. I definitely want to build some urban buildings soon. But I actually am very low in civil actions, and it might take a lot of civil actions to set Shakespeare off and to also be prepared to defend against the military pressure. So in this situation, I rather made a decision to already play the cultural heritage and be a bit more flexible with my civil actions instead of getting those 3 additional resources. Especially taking the urban growth would also mean that the breakthrough falls down to 1 civil action for e5, and while he has some nice additional science, it could still be a useful card for him, and it could also still be a useful card for me, and now that it stays in 2, it is more likely that it will be available for me at the next turn. I will draw some cards, 1 colonization card, and also the Prosperity, which is an interesting event with me having the St. Peter's Basilica. As you can see, now there are some interesting cards revealed. Shakespeare's coming down the road, and also the ocean liner service. I probably don't want to go for the ocean liner service now that I have built a 3rd farm, but maybe e5 could still go for it. Now, especially now that he lost 2 yellow tokens, the food production loan maybe doesn't give him that much population. This turn he will copy the phalanx tactic with having some spare military actions and also builds a drama. I will see the Prosperity into the deck. That one should definitely be nice for me, especially now that I don't go for the ocean liner service, and with me hopefully soon having a lot of happy faces when I go for Shakespeare and operas. And then there's actually the vast territory revealed. And the question is, how much do I want to bid for this? And I came to the conclusion that I only want to bid 1 unit, 1 cavalryman for that, and even that, I was not sure if it is actually that good for me. I mean, of course, I need a lot of population for Shakespeare, and 3 additional yellow tokens and 3 food would definitely be very strong to get. But I also have then a lot of food saved up, and it could be a bit troublesome to use my civil actions effectively and get out of corruption, because this turn I will have to grab Shakespeare for 2 civil actions. e5 nicely let him stay on this awkward 6th spot on the card row. And then the vast territory makes it a bit difficult to get out of corruption, to set everything up that I want to go for with the printing press and the opera, so I didn't like it actually too much to win it here, as it is a bit of a distraction, but long term it might still be very nice to have the additional yellow tokens, because the population might definitely still be very useful to have at some point, even with the Prosperity coming, and maybe the good harvest if I should still decide to put this into the deck. And also I don't want to give it to e5, who has lost 2 yellow tokens. For him the yellow tokens might be even stronger than for me, and so I was willing to bid 1 unit, but not more, because I think that would be too big of a distraction. Then I would rather give it to e5, but at least I made e5 lose 2 yellow tokens as well, of course, but 2 defense cards earlier on, and with that I was at the end actually able to win it for 1 cavalryman. But as you can see, I have now a lot of food production actually, and it won't be that easy for me to get out of corruption now. This turn I will go for Shakespeare. I could potentially also wait for Maria Theresa, but then I might not get the civil action back, meaning I don't know if she will actually be available for cheaper for me, and Shakespeare is just too strong, and especially in 2-player games with having that much population, so I really want to go for him. Then I actually don't have the option to go for the ocean liner service any longer, but now of course I don't need it anyway with having won the vast territory, so it will be available for e5, and then I have 3 civil actions left. And the question is what to do with them. I definitely want to increase my population, and what I could do now would be to just develop the printing press and build one. It would mean having corruption, but at least increase my science production. Already this turn I set already up 1 printing press using my civil actions already in something that I need to do anyway, also increasing my culture production by 1. So that would be very fine. However, I also have the option to just increase my population 1 more time and build a cavalryman, which would then get me out of corruption. I would use the free military action from Jan Žižka, again getting a bit stronger, and maybe putting a bit of pressure again on e5, also getting a culture reduction from there. And yeah, it was a close decision. But when I do go for Discovery Man, then, and as you can see, that was the thing that I went for at the end, then I could just increase my population one last time, or maybe develop the printing press as my last civil action, just being very, very civil action efficient. Especially because at the next gen there are maybe some cards that I want to go for example a copy of Cannon, or maybe this architecture could still be very, very strong for me. However, if I want to go for something like the architecture, then I think at the moment I just don't have enough science for it, and taking this breakthrough is actually also very interesting. I could have just gone for one printing press, increasing my science production by one, and already just using actions that are efficient. But at the end, I made a decision that the additional science from the breakthrough is actually quite valuable. It was a very close decision because it will, at the next turn, it will be quite difficult for me to get out of corruption, to do all of the things that I want to do. But the additional science might also be very useful for me, maybe allowing me to go for printing press, opera, architecture, and still have enough science to then also threaten to go for another military technology, to be not too vulnerable for the military. And so at the end I was willing to take this breakthrough for one civil action because it's just a very efficient deal. I was willing to take it even though I have some trouble with being on low civil actions at the moment. Now I will draw some cards. Another colonization card, also the National Pride is a very nice event to see. And E5, even though he has a lot of food production, will still go for the ocean liner service, respects the strength of this wonder, goes for one more opera, for one more drama, going up to 7 culture production. So for now he somewhat keeps up with the culture production, is only slightly behind me, has even a bit more production than me for now. But of course soon I might be able to set up a lot of culture production with going for Shakespeare. And then E5 builds one step of the ocean liner service and can then maybe finish it at the next turn, and will also have a lot of population available. Now it is my turn. I could still see the good harvest, but for now it might even just cause some corruption issues for me. There is already the prosperity coming, and with that I rather made the decision to seed the National Pride into the deck. The event revealed is the Rebellion, but no one gets hit by that. And this turn I need to develop the printing press, because otherwise I will lose them to the end of the age. I could of course go for journalisms instead, but I just think I don't have the civil actions for that. And also I will have a lot of population, so just the printing press being very cheap might actually be beneficial over the journalisms offering a bit more of science and culture production. So I just will go for the printing presses. I will build one printing press. When I thought about my turn, and the turn before, I thought that maybe I just would like to go for increasing my population again, building one more printing press. However, then I have only one civil action left to take a card. I thought maybe I would just take the cannons and be fine with that, but I also now really wanted to take this architecture away from E5. First of all, to take it away because he has a lot of science, he can very nicely use it to finish the ocean liner service, and then maybe can take journalisms, build some very cheap journalisms with having a strong production, and then even though he doesn't have a culture leader, he could still maybe somewhat compete, and maybe then go for Fleming or Marlene Dietrich in H3, and then compete with my Shakespeare, and save a lot of resources on his urban buildings. And the architecture of course could still be useful for me. It might be a bit difficult to implement it with the science cost and also the civil action cost to actually take and develop it, but it could also be nice to have for the potential red cross that is coming in H3, and so I kinda wanted to take the cannons to just be more safe for the military, as maybe E5 could still try to go for a bit of military pressure. He has 5 military actions with the strategy. If he has nice tactic, he could become quite threatening, and so I made a decision to only go for one printing press, increase my population, and then I will take the cannons and the architecture. However, there was another question that I had to answer for this turn, and it was if I want to build another cavalryman, because if I do this, it would actually again get me out of corruption. I would be able to one last time use the additional military action from Jan Žižka, and then I could elect Shakespeare, and I would get out of corruption, having a bit more strength. But at the end I actually made a decision against it and rather went for corruption, because for now I don't really know if I need a cavalryman. Maybe I will draw a tactic where I don't really need it, maybe the game will just remain very peaceful, and then it's just an investment, even though it is relatively cheap, basically only 3 resources because it gets me out of corruption. Still, the population might be needed elsewhere. If I put it now into the cavalryman, I again need another civil action to just have again a free population, and at the next turn I might want to start going for some operas. And with not knowing if I will actually need a cavalryman, and maybe it could still be an investment that just distracts me from building a lot of culture production, I made the decision to not go for it, but it was a close one and could also be nice to just have this cavalryman. And then I said I will go for the cannons, elect Shakespeare, as I don't want to lose the civil action that I get for replacing Jan Žižka, as I'm very tight on civil actions, and then I will take the architecture. Now I get my first H2 tactic, as you can see, the defensive army. So if I want to actually go for that, then it could actually be quite nice that I didn't commit to the cavalryman, but it's also not really an ideal tactic for me to go for, as I would need to develop 2 techs, and then it doesn't offer me that much strength, because I already did the cavalryman. It's a bit tricky to get into it. E5 surprised me a little bit with this turn. I thought that maybe you would just like to finish the ocean liner service and then maybe go for the journalisms, having something available to build some cultural production, but there are still 2 copies of operas. You can maybe, but he has the drama, so it's interesting that he passed the journalisms, but there might also be H3 solutions available soon, and it might mean that he will actually maybe put a bit of pressure on me, and also, now that he builds the cavalryman, he will actually be stronger, potentially indicating that there is actually the last event might be a strength event, which I was a bit surprised to see, because I was stronger all the time, so I didn't really expect that one of his unknown events might be a strength event. It would also be a bit annoying that if that would now be in the last position of that event deck, so I was a bit uncertain. Does he just want to do it to maybe be set up and be prepared to maybe face mobile artillery to start going for something, getting out of corruption, using his military actions already, or does he actually want to get stronger because there's a strength event on top? I wasn't really certain what I should think of it, because I would be a bit surprised if there was actually a strength event all the time in this row, but maybe if I was a bit surprised by my wall earlier on by this big strength push, and maybe thought he, with his free population, could maybe win a strength event, and now maybe he again can fight for it, and I was a bit worried about that. It's only an H1 strength event, but it could still be a bit annoying to get hit by one. And then at my turn I could potentially seed, but all of the events are maybe not too great. Now that E5 went for cavalryman, I might just lose the crime wave. The iconoclasm is very nice to have, know that it's not in the deck, and the autonomous territory is also too risky to seed, so I just skipped my politics phase. Also H3 will start, now E5 will lose the knights, and then this turn I will go for the opera. I can develop it, I can build one. I make the decision to not go for the architecture yet, because it would mean that I don't have enough science to go for either riflemen or cannons at the next turn, making me maybe a little bit vulnerable. It could be that E5 maybe has the mobile artillery, could go for one cannon, reveal the tactic, maybe go for an H2 war. If things go bad, there could even be the fundamentalism on the row, so I just wanted to be a bit more threatening, with at least being able to threaten to go for a nice tactic. And I delay the architecture for now, but maybe you still want to go for it soon. And then I have 2 civil actions left, and I just use those civil actions to increase my population. Even if I increase my population again, it's not enough to get out of corruption. I don't want to build another cavalryman, with the defensive army being my only tactic at the moment. And so I just again accepted to have corruption, which is definitely not ideal, but at least those buildings are a bit cheaper thanks to Shakespeare. And I just made the decision to put one more worker already into printing press, because the science that I get from that is just quite valuable, and I have already the civil action spent. I'm now at 10 culture production, meaning that hopefully I will start generating quite a bit of a culture lead now, and then hopefully I also maybe will have a way to defend myself. With having all of those technologies, I'm nicely prepared for many H3 tactics. So I was hoping that maybe I'm not too vulnerable for the military, but of course if E5 has a strong tactic, things could potentially get a bit dangerous. I keep the crime wave in the defensive army tactic, and I will actually draw 2 more colonization cards, which is nice, and also the impact of agriculture, which is at the moment a neutral impact. However, it's not that unlikely that E5 will actually go through his complete yellow bank with the ocean liner service, so maybe there's a chance that he will actually have not more production than consumption at the end of or in H4, and then it could actually turn out to be a nice impact for me. E5 seeds, and sadly that last event is indeed a strength event, and the Crusades is maybe one that now at this point of the game is actually is actually quite strong, because me winning it or him winning it is basically a 16 culture swing that can definitely make a difference. I was a bit annoyed that it wasn't revealed earlier when I was stronger, because it would be quite bad if the game is close at the end, but now E5 will overtake me in culture, of course only after his turn, but the problem is now I can't that easily seed, because the National Pride is actually coming, so I wasn't too happy to see this Crusades event. E5 now goes for the computers, maybe setting up for a very big economy. At least they are not the biggest payoff leaders in the game. Steve Jobs and Marie Curie. Marie Curie is coming down the road. It might be quite fine for him to actually go for the next turn, starting some culture reduction and still getting some other benefits. But maybe it's not the strongest computer leader, so I was not too afraid of it. But of course, with going for the computers, he might be nicely set up for a lot of impacts. And some other stuff has a lot of science to work with. Easily can go for an H3 government farm. So I thought that on one hand I will be able to maybe generate a bit of a culture lead and set up something strong with Shakespeare, but E5, especially if he gets an H3 government farm soon, also has a lot of things going for him, might have a lot of strong impacts, can maybe more easily grab a wonder, and so I was a bit worried that maybe yeah, I could get a little bit behind, but on the other hand Shakespeare is just also quite strong and will do a lot of work. At my turn, normally I kind of would have liked to see the impact of agriculture into the deck, just because I can't that easily keep it in hand, because I have a lot of colonization cards, maybe a tactic that I want to keep. But if I see it now, there is just a risk that I miss out on the National Pride, and I think that would be quite a setback, losing another event and gifting some culture to my opponent. So at the end, I made a decision to not see it, as it is only a neutral event, maybe, with the potential to being a nice event. And with that, I made a decision to hold back with seeding for at least one turn. I will then increase my population. Now I will go for the architecture, at least have enough science to go for one more military technology at my next turn, and now I can at least still save some resources and also have the technology developed for something like the Red Cross, which could be interesting because there's the prosperity coming, and even though I don't have a lot of civil actions now, maybe there's the chance that I get the civil service or maybe even an H3 government form and later on when I maybe get a revolutionary idea or something, and then the Red Cross could still be a very interesting event for me. I will go for another pair, putting myself at 15 culture reduction. I will increase my population, and then again I could have the chance to go for another breakthrough, but here I just wanted to get yet another printing press going, as I have now some somewhat decent science production. Hopefully I will also be fine without a breakthrough. And here I just thought that investing the civil action into the printing press is more important. And I'm now at 16 culture production, meaning I'm at 58. I'm starting to generate a little bit of a lead despite the Crusades being revealed. And then also I have some decent science production, but only with the defensive army I could potentially be vulnerable against the military attack from E5, and also E5 has the strong economy, so I was not too sure about my position, but at least I can now just generate a lot of culture production, and at the next turn I can even build another opera going to over 20 culture production, which will be quite strong. And also, as you can see at the end of my turn, I did actually discard the defensive army tactic, which is quite of a risk. I definitely might miss it at the end, but it's also just not giving me that much strength. I could just go for Rifleman, go for second phalanx tactic, and it's just a very big investment until the defensive army really pays off. And I will have 3 draws. I'm prepared for a lot of H3 tactics. I'm threatening some H3 tactics. So at the end I was willing to discard it, but I didn't feel too great. But if there's a strong colony coming, could also be very strong to be able to maybe compete a bit better against it, or maybe if E5 goes for some strength, the defense cards could also still be quite nice to maybe be able to defend against an aggression. And with that I actually was at the end willing to discard the tactic, but didn't feel too great about it. I don't draw a replacement tactic for now, instead the impact of technology, which probably will end up being better for E5, so it's mainly good to know that it isn't in the deck. E5 will go for building 1 cavalryman, getting a bit stronger, getting out of corruption, has now 2 unhappy workers, but maybe could go for Marlene Dietrich, instead will go for the bro sports, also for the engineering genius and the endowment, letting the Hollywood actually not letting the Hollywood stay on the 6th spot here, so either I take it now or it will be discarded, but leaving me with the option to go for Marlene Dietrich potentially. This turn I will have enough culture to win the National Pride, so I start seeding the impact of agriculture into the deck, and the event revealed is the international negotiations, which is actually not too bad for me in this situation, because first of all, of course, I can choose whether I will give to E5, I will give him some additional food, which is maybe not that helpful for him, and while the food could maybe still be helpful for me, especially if I maybe want to go for the Red Cross at some point, this turn is actually helpful because with the turn that I had planned, I actually had corruption, but thanks to losing the food, now I actually will not have corruption, so I basically lose 3 food, but gain 2 additional resources, so at the end this event was actually not too bad, even though that of course sometimes can be quite an annoying event. So I will increase my population, I will build 1 more opera. As you can see, I won't go for the Hollywood, I just don't think I have the civil actions for it. Could mean that e5 will now go for it, he has the dramas, I will take Marlene Dietrich away, but he could still go for Fleming. But there are not that many turns left, and I don't think he can go for a really big Hollywood. It could still be a fine wonder for him, but if he takes it, at least it means that I don't have any that there isn't any contest over the red cross any longer. And that could be fine for me, and it's just, I think, too costly, and going for Marlene Dietrich is maybe more important also in case there is still a bit of military pressure going on. e5 went for the Hussars tactic, is now at 17 strength, and so I think having Marlene Dietrich might be quite nice, and she will just be a very strong leader for me, and could also be nice for e5 potentially, so I think taking her is more important, and I can't take her and the Hollywood anyway. And with my last civil action I will go for the patriotism, which I think is also quite an important card to have, just making me a bit more threatening, because e5 could go for 2 more cavalrymen in a war, and at least has to be risky for him to go for it. At the moment he could potentially win the war, because I don't have any tactic to work with. I could also go for Hussars for myself with Marlene Dietrich, but I can't copy the tactic and go for 3 cavalrymen, so I can't go for that much strength. But with the patriotism, with the additional military action and the additional resources, I'm just threatening more. For example, if I would have the mechanized army tactic, I can go for 3 cannons, reveal the tactic. That would be enough to defeat e5, so hopefully just those threats, even if he has a war, would make him too afraid to go for one. And so I think the patriotism is very important to have here, because without it I'm looking a lot less threatening. And with the 21 culture production, I'm now really starting to generate a little bit of a lead, which is good. But I was a bit afraid that if e5 commits to the military now, I might get a little bit into trouble, but at least I have Marlene to help me now with that. And for those military threats, I was very happy to see that I draw now 2 tactics that I can work with, especially of course the mechanized army. Now I actually could go for 3 cannons and reveal the tactic, and that made me very relieved, because now I hopefully will have a way to defend myself. Now it's e5's turn. There are some cards revealed. He will cede and opens the National Pride, which is nice, so I gain 5 additional culture. He will go for Mandela this turn, just getting an additional civil action, also some additional culture reduction with going for the pro sports. The additional civil actions might be helpful for him, maybe making it easier to potentially go for a wonder, for example the Red Cross. He will also start building some cannons, maybe he has a copy of mechanized army tactic of his own, or maybe a more mobile artillery tactic, and then he will also take the reserves. Has corruption at the end, but only food corruption, which isn't really a big deal for him. Also scores a Nobel Prize, so he's also generating a nice amount of culture, but is falling behind a little bit definitely. This turn I will again cede. The impact of population will hopefully be a somewhat fine impact for me, and of course there could be refugees or something revealed, which again could make the impact quite a bit worse, but I was willing to cede it. The popularization of science is revealed, which gives e5 5 additional culture, so basically making up for the National Pride that I won earlier. And this turn, as you can see, I will go for the civil service. I think having more civil actions is quite valuable for me, especially with me maybe wanting to go for the Red Cross, and also for a lot of impacts it is quite strong. So I think the civil service is just a very nice card to get here. I will develop it, and then there's the question, how much do I have to be afraid of potential wars? Because there's one card where is coming down the road that did actually cause some troubles could cause some trouble for me, and that is the fundamentalism. e5 could declare war, go for the fundamentalism, and if he has a tactic like maybe mechanized army or mobile artillery, things could get quite a bit threatening. However, just going for tactic and the fundamentalism would maybe be an amount of strength that I would maybe be prepared to defend against, with now having the mechanized army tactic Marlene Dietrich, so maybe that would be fine. But there is also the not unlikely chance that maybe if I take now something like Revolutionary Idea and maybe also military buildup, there will a lot of cards be revealed. There are 2 copies of Air Forces left, and e5 actually has enough science to go for both fundamentalism and the Air Forces, meaning he could Take develop the fundamentalism, take develop the air forces. He has enough population thanks to the Oceaner service, only needs to play the reserves, has then 12 resources, just enough to go for 1 cannon, 1 air force. If he then has the mechanized army tactic or maybe also the mobile artillery tactic, he could be able to go for an amount of strength that I could just not compete against, and with that at the end it was relatively clear for me to go for the fundamentalism. I thought about some alternatives. I for a moment missed out on this option that he can go for fundamentalism and air forces potentially, and I thought about denying satellites, because then I thought about if he can go for fundamentalism and satellites, and then the satellites actually were, I think, the thing that he maybe needed and that I maybe could need to also make me safe, but with the potential air forces, I think I just have to deny the fundamentalism. But having the fundamentalism is maybe actually not too bad, because with taking the revolutionary idea, I have actually just enough science to develop it at the next turn, meaning I can use the strength myself, but maybe even more importantly, I can use the increased urban building limit myself, making it sure that if I want to, I can go for another pair with Shakespeare the next turn, which could be very strong, also getting additional civil action from it. I mean, if I need to play the revolutionary year, so I don't really gaining additional civil actions, but maybe in 2 turns, if I have it developed, it could be important to maybe just take and finish the Red Cross or something like this. So I think the fundamentalism is not only a denial, but can actually be also nice for myself, because it's the only H3 technology, H3 government form that I can go for at the next turn, and so the only way how I can actually go for another pair, and it could be a strong option to go for another pair if maybe now the Red Cross is revealed, E5 takes it, and then I don't get a wonder and instead have to just rely on raw culture production and maybe some impacts that I can prepare for. As you can see, I don't go for the military build-up, however I will have 16 resources plus the patriotism, so I should have enough resources now that the fundamentalism is gone. E5 doesn't have an easy way to get more military actions. He could potentially get the communism and then still go for communism and air forces, but I have the mechanized army tactic and cannons, which is quite nice for me, and so I wasn't that much afraid of a war any longer. I just keep the tactic and the 2 colonization cards, and I will draw another tactic that potentially could be used, modern army, and also 2 impacts, especially the impact of happiness could at least be a neutral impact, allowing me to see it, which could be nice. And E5 is actually going for an armed intervention against me. I need both defense cards to defend. I think one would not be enough, so now it actually paid off that I played it a bit risky earlier on and discarded the defensive army, because if I would have discarded one of those colonization cards, I now maybe would have gotten hit by an aggression. E5, interestingly, will go for the Empire State Building. There is also the Red Cross, however, he has an engineering genius and maybe the potential to make that one relatively big. However, with going for the Empire State Building, he leaves me the option to go for the Red Cross. However, here he is maybe judging the situation not perfectly right because of not having the full event knowledge, which is quite an advantage for me, because the last event is actually the Prosperity. So for him, it's maybe looking like I'm not that nicely prepared to go for the Red Cross, but as soon as the Prosperity is revealed, I have 8 additional food, and then I will be able to go for the Red Cross very nicely. I think I would have been able to go for the Red Cross also without the Prosperity, with just taking Red Cross in reserves, but it definitely would be more costly for me, and so maybe E5, with not knowing about the Prosperity, makes the call to rather go for the Empire State Building, which maybe will be the bigger wonder of himself, but also leaves, of course, me with the option to go for the Red Cross. So he will go for that, will take and develop the satellites. Maybe there could be an impact for the satellites in the deck, and then also takes the mechanized agriculture in hand. Now it's my turn. I see the impact of happiness, the Prosperity is revealed, and I will go for the Red Cross this turn. And then the question is, do I want to anti-age this turn or not? And I think it's relatively clear that I have to anti-age. On one hand, of course, I have some big culture production, but E5 has maybe the stronger economy and can improve his position every turn. Maybe he has the chance to seed even more impacts into the deck, also maybe play another aggression. And also, in order to be safe from a war, I need to develop the cannons this turn, so I need to take Red Cross, develop cannons, and then I can't do that much else. I could maybe build 1 additional opera or something, get a bit of additional culture production going, but I can't really go for another pair or something in addition to the Red Cross. And if I don't develop the cannons, I am in big danger of a war. So I think here, especially because now E5 could for certain go for communism and air forces, is still quite a bit threatening. Could even with 18 resource that he has, I mean, he can't go for 3 cannons and air force, but he could go for threatening amount of strength. and with that I think I will just end the age here, because when we take a look at the culture, now to develop the fundamentalism and take those 2 cards, I will end the age. I will have a bunch of corruption, but that's not too bad, and then I will be at 139 culture at the end of my turn, so I have quite a big of a lead. E5 will actually be able to get a nice amount of culture. He will be able to go for the democracy, still score Nobel Prize, get the endowment, get the Empire State Building, maybe for 28 culture potentially. So no, so with that he gets quite a nice amount of culture, but I will get another big culture production. I will get 4 steps of the Red Cross, and with that I was hoping that unless there are the perfect impacts for him, but there's only 1 impact yet seeded by him, I have really good chances to win this game. Also, maybe as you noticed, I keep Shakespeare, but that would have been an interesting option. I could have elected Marlene Dietrich, disbanded the warrior, and built a cavalryman, and it wouldn't get me out of corruption, but it would, out of all corruption, but it would mean that I'm not in danger of an aggression any longer. And at the first look, of course, it seems like I should play it very safe here, don't take any risks, because I'm in a nice position, and so maybe I should just miss out on the 3 additional culture production from Shakespeare and just be safe from an aggression. But I think that would be the wrong thinking here, because in order for e5 to still have a chance in a game, he needs the perfect things happening for him anyway. So that could be either going for an aggression or maybe just having a very strong impact available. And I think the more dangerous scenario than just getting hit by an armed intervention, but keeping Shakespeare, keeping more culture production, would be if I sacrifice now some culture production. It's not that much, but if I sacrifice some culture production to be safe from aggression, but then he actually has just a very strong impact. That I think would be the scenario that I have to be the most afraid of here. If he now gets an armed intervention, it's maybe not too bad, because I get at least more culture from Shakespeare, and I also have the chance to draw another colonization card, and with not doing those the spending of a warrior and building a cavalryman, I also get more draws, meaning I not only have not only get 3 safe culture from Shakespeare, but also have a higher chance to get even more culture from a potentially nice impact. And with that, I just think it's better to keep Shakespeare, because e5 could go for an aggression, but he might also just have a very strong impact. And yeah, I said it would be the bigger risk if I sacrifice some culture now and don't get anything out of it. So I will draw some cards. I do actually get an impact with the additional draws, the impact of harmony, which could potentially be interesting. Sadly, I was not able to put both warriors into cavalryman, because if I would do it, I think I could actually potentially then make it more difficult for e5 to actually get enough value out of the Empire State Building, because it's not that easy for him to overtake me in food production and in the strength, but I don't have enough military actions to do this, so that wasn't really an option. Now h4 starts, it's the last round, e5 will cede, so he has another impact, doesn't go for an aggression anyway. The impact revealed is the impact of population, giving me 2 additional points against him. And he will then go for the democracy, develops the mechanized agriculture, goes for an upgrade, which sadly will improve his impact of agriculture, which is not ideal. He then finishes the Empire State Building. Thanks to the upgrade, he has now the biggest production in 4 categories, only the culture is missing. So this is quite a nice Empire State Building. He will build a step of my Red Cross, and here was one miscalculation that I did, because of a blue token shortage. I will lose 1 food. Sadly, I couldn't decide what to lose, otherwise I would have lost 2 resources instead, because now I'm missing 1 food to increase my population and finish the Red Cross, which is a bit annoying, and I forgot about that when calculating my next turn, so that's definitely something to that maybe can easily be forgotten. So sadly, I will, if I want to get another population out normally, I need to play the reserves of food, and then e5 will also play the endowment for 6 additional culture. Meaning he has actually scored quite a lot of amount of culture at his last turn with the Nobel Prize, the endowment, and the Empire State Building also seeding. But yeah, he's actually in front of me, but I will now also get a relatively strong last turn. I will go for the impact of harmony. I could have just maxed out my culture reduction, but the impact of harmony, I can make it that it is a +4 impact against e5, which is then quite strong and should be the best option for me. The impact of happiness is revealed. It was one disadvantage of keeping Shakespeare. I will have now 2 culture less, but it still gave me +1 culture in total compared to going for Marlene Dietrich. And I will elect her now, finish the Red Cross for some points, play the reserves for food, increase my population, build 1 additional opera, and then after that I will just disband 2 labs, play the patriotism, and then go for 2 cavalrymen and another cavalryman. Now I have a harmony of 24. Also I'm stronger, so in case e5 has committed to an impact of strength, I would win that now. And while I destroy those labs, which leaves me potentially vulnerable to an impact of variety, and of course also an impact of balance. Balance is a bit threatening. That could be a strong one for e5, but the impact of variety is not strong enough for e5 anyway. So for the impact of balance it could be bad, but it just makes one guaranteed impact that I have in there now quite strong, and I have quite a big lead when I get my culture reduction, so I was quite confident that hopefully I should have a big enough lead to win this game, as I have more than 30 culture lead and also some impacts in there that are nice for me. The impact of agriculture is now actually a bit better for e5, but he would need 2 very strong impacts in order to catch up to me. And the first one is the impact of science, so that is a strong one, bringing him a little bit closer to me. Then there's my impact of harmony, giving me +4 against e5. So I have a bit more of a lead again. Then the next impact is the impact of agriculture, giving +3 to e5, and then there's no unknown impact, and I don't know if there is any big enough impact. It is at the end the impact of government, and that is actually the same for both of us, meaning at the end I am able to win this game with a 25 culture lead, and with that secure my 3rd spot in the finals of the World Championship. And so I was very happy about this outcome. I didn't feel too confident at all parts of the game, because e5 had some nice economy going, could potentially have been threatening. Luckily, as in the game against pv4, I did draw the mechanized army tactic, just when I needed it, or when I potentially would have needed it. At the end, e5 didn't really go for a lot of military pressure, but then I felt a lot safer, and we just saw again the power of Shakespeare just generating a lot of culture production. Is just so strong in 2-player games, and at the end left me with a big culture lead that e5 wasn't able to overcome peacefully, even though he had a nice economy, but he also got damaged earlier on with the war over territory, and at the end just going for that big amount of culture reduction was enough for me to take the win in this game. Also, if you maybe remembered all the 2-player games, there are actually some similarities between all of them, because in all of them I had Marlene Dietrich at the end as my leader, and also in all of them I actually went for the Theocracy, interestingly, so a very Theocracy heavy ending of the World Championship for me. But I think in 2-player games it can actually be a very viable government form, and in this case allowed me to go for the war, because I could free up one more population that I could put into the cavalryman. And so the Theocracy I think was quite strong in this game. At some point the 5 civil actions were of course a bit limiting, but I still somewhat managed to set up this culture reduction, and at the end that was then enough. And now with this game finished, we can also take a look at the final standings of the tournament now. And as you can see, with this last win against e5, I just managed to overtake him in the standings. I am now at the end at 13 points, not the ideal result, but I am very happy at the end that I managed to at least make it to the 3rd position, being part of the prize pool, winning the bronze medal. So I was quite happy that at least the finals had a very nice ending for me. Of course, unfortunate for e5, now with the last game being overtaken, finishing in the 4th position. That's definitely not great for him, but I think he can still be very proud on his World Championship campaign, because he was maybe the biggest surprise in the finals, because he didn't participate in that many big tournaments before, at least not in tournaments that I have known of, only in some of them maybe, and with this was a bit of an unknown player, and with that just had a very strong performance, making it into the finals, and almost made it into the bronze medal. Just needed to win this last game against me, and of course in some games there could have been some stuff gone differently, and he easily could have also with that finished in the medal ranking. So still a great tournament by him. And then of course we have pv4 and Martin Boucher at the end. Martin Boucher with 29 points, so he really played a very, very strong final. At the end is the deserved new world champion, and pv4 also with a very strong campaign, the only player to stay in the upper bracket for all the time, and at the end also finishing in the 2nd position at the end. Quite some strong performances by both of those players, and I'm happy that at least I finished at a 3rd position, and with this year's World Championship has come to an end. I hope it was very interesting for you to follow follow this tournament and see some different players and just no, I think it was quite an exciting tournament to play. Also a bit of a draining one energy-wise because you always have to be no, you want to pull off a nice performance. I take it a little bit more relaxed, but of course when you're playing the finals, then you don't want to no, then make some silly mistakes or something, and then so it was also a bit draining energy-wise, but no. Now it's over, now it's a bit more relaxing, and the nice thing about a new format for the next World Championship is that the players who have played in the finals will only need to start in, I think, stage 3 or stage 4. So now there will be a little bit of a break for me and also the other players until the next World Championship will start. And I'm also, after that break, I think I will again be very much looking forward to the next event. Alright, then I thank you for watching. I hope it was an interesting campaign for you following this World Championship, and then see you in the next video. I still have to think about what I want to do next, if I maybe want to cover a tournament or do something else, but there will be some videos coming at some point. Maybe I will take a little bit of a break, but yeah, you definitely can expect something to come. And then with that, have a nice time and see you in the next video.